Is there a difference?
Well, it is technically it is. I mean,
You know?
technically it is a form of reparations, right? Because you're reclaiming land that was taken from you. That's still a form of reparations. You know what I mean? Hold
Right.
on, you guys.
So
I'm
when you
trying.
bring in the case, I just need to know, yes, when people are swindled, families are swindled, and that happens a lot. The issue is that the person who has been harmed is there if they're deceased, if if the family had already put in a claim earlier, that is very helpful. But if not, then the local court can actually decide. But a general suit on reparations, like the Deirdre Farmer Pelman case, those general cases where people say my ancestors, that's a label. They don't say what ancestor, right, was harmed. And the Deirdre Farmer case basically said that only uh, the ancestor was harmed and not you.
And not you.
And
And then
that's that.
why would you get the money if that's not your dad, or
Hmm?
you know what I'm
Well,
saying?
what about heirs property? Because heirs property law comes in, right? That says that if you are the rightful heir to land and to property that was taken from you, however many years ago, or decades or centuries ago, right? And perhaps because taxes wasn't paid, or it was lost through eminent domain, or because of the racist, that the political climate at the time, there were many reasons why people lost their land. And so now here we are, in 2000s, where you have heirs property law coming into existence to sort of rectify that,
Hmm. Well,
right?
what you're talking
So,
about is what I was initially talking about.
yeah.
There has to be an administrator of the estate. So that's where that plugs in. So if the family kept track of administrative status, right, then they can be the legal heirs. But the problem is if you're not the legal heir, right, by your family, then you have no standing, and your and then the case will be dismissed in federal court. Again, in state court and county court and city court, particularly city and county court, is where our people are, where we have elected officials who are
Mhm.
mindful of this. And so that's where uh, thinking from myself and other people that have looked at and studied local reparations say that we, in our cities and counties where we have a bulk populations, we need to enact we need to enact city uh, city human rights laws and deal with things that you're talking about.
Right.
But without that in a legal construction, you don't you don't have any. For example, let's say you have a sister and you want to do this, and you've gotten far. You've spent 10, 15, $20,000, $40,000, because usually a case like this costs about, with a lawyer, usually starting at 50 to $100,000, just starting, right? And you do all the work, and your sister says, and it's coming to a conclusion, and your sister says, "But I want my money. How much money am I going to get?" And you're like, "We haven't even won the case." She said, "Precisely. What do you mean? We, you, all right?" And so the the um, the law has to fine tune who does the person have the right to sue. So even today, what happens is, let's say, okay, in my case, my mom got ran over. This is Friday, on a Friday, um, and she got ran over, and I have a brother and a sister. My brother hired an attorney, or contracted with some attorney, but I'm the oldest, and I found a will.
Mm.
And I was like, no, I'm the legal representative. I went down to the probate court. I have the will. I'm the legal representative. and you're going to have to cease and desist whatever you're doing, right? That didn't sit well with my
Sibling.
family, and lots of families have this problem. And so ultimately, for the case to go forward, my brother and sister had to consent that they that I am the legal representative. So I do completely understand what you're saying,
Yeah.
and the difference is I can talk, but I can ultimately get to that case, which I plan to do, so that
Okay.
you all know that you will all know that these people who are running around talking about reparations, who have been on all of these shows, have not given you anything legal, maybe some words, but they haven't shown you any case law. And I'm saying that the last reparations case that happened sealed our doom. It sealed our doom. And so reparations now has to be local reparations. And then there's arguments about who gets the local reparations. Is it lineage based? Well, even if it's lineage based, then these people, unfortunately, have to show their lineage. Then it has to be, are you a resident of the city or the county? If you're not a resident or a city of a county in a certain amount of years, then you will be excluded. You have to be a living resident of the city or the county, right? To even apply. Why? Because of costs, and they have to narrow it down, and it's just fiduciary.
Everything he let me say this too concerning our guest. Okay, we will drop the link so you can ask questions and about when Brother Reggie is
Mhm.
ready for that. So there's no need to disrespect people in the chat. Just hold your tongue,
Oh,
write down your question, and just wait until you have the opportunity.
well,
But we will be adults and not act like children by
mm,
making
well,
nasty remarks. And that's how we're going to do it over
mhm.
here. Because
Well,
we're trying to wait a minute, Reg. Because we're trying to unscramble. I'm sorry, Sharice. We're trying to unscramble the mind. So that's why I said write down your questions in the chat, please.
okay.
So you
Well,
know.
thank you. But
No,
the,
no,
the
no, Reg. That's all I wanted to say. Sharice has a question she wanted to ask you.
yeah, but I'm going to say that the conduct of these type of people is a conduct that got us in this situation that we are in. The negative conduct of people who are untrained, didn't pass their GEDs, can't get Social Security because they never worked, right? And always have something to say, but you can't track down any work experience, and certainly no work experience for our people. And so let them say what they want to say, but
That's fine.
they
That's
are,
fine. I'm just asking that as for our
yeah,
cousins in
yeah.
the chat. Let's just keep
They actually are doing very well. I think she just said that just for the outset, but I'm looking at the comments and they're doing very well. The usually the type of people that we have popping in our chat are very educated. They all work. They have jobs. I'm sure they passed the GED. So I don't think that those type of dismissive comments need to be made, because it's sort of it does create some kind of contention. So thank you, Freedom. Freedom was just reminding in terms of
Well,
decorum.
I've
But
been on.
great. They're making great points. They're asking good questions. Yeah,
Okay.
so let's rock and roll. Go ahead, Sharice.
Hi, Sharice.
Brother Reggie. I think my question is more so because I know I came in a little bit late and I might have missed the top half of your presentation.
I didn't even present yet.
Oh, okay. I just think, it's always an interesting thing when people always say that a reparations situation is impossible. I believe that we are the direct descendants of historical injustices and things that have happened in our country that we still suffer from to this day. Now, I think when we're talking about this, I think it should go along the line of what exactly it is, what exactly is the problem, and then we can go from there and work it out on those lines. Because I do think that in this case, there is a grounds for maybe a class action lawsuit or something like that in this regard, because we are still experiencing the same discrimination right now in 2025. So, I mean, I just want to know, what do you think about that? Do you think?
Well, that's why I didn't get a chance to present yet. So
Okay.
the first thing is The first thing is to read the case law. Would you agree? To understand what the standing of the court is?
Certainly.
Okay. So
Certainly. There,
that's
there
where
is case laws out, right? There is HR 40 and things, you know. I mean, I guess there was some attempts, but nothing concrete, if you will.
Well, so the difference is that since I'm a researcher and I've been doing this for a long time, I have to read the case law to be informed and then look at the history and then strategize on how to deal with the how to in fact deal with what the court has already said that has created a burden, and then come up with strategies to defeat the burdens that they have put there. So first you have to know what the burdens are.
Mm-hmm.
So if you don't know what the burdens are and then you do a case, then you're going to get shot down with a technical term called the 12b6 motion to dismiss, right? Because you lack standing and then you didn't read the case law, right? Because you're going on to assumptions. But what they have done to us in a long time have looked at the latches that we would use to as plaintiffs, and they will and they have enough case law in which a federal judge would dismiss the case based on what is in the case law. So the case law is important. But I did say, Sharice, I did say that the since the Deirdre Farmer Pellman case has passed and it did not go in our favor, then we've learned a lot about the case law, and the whole reparations movement has been moving to city and county, right? Where I did say that city and county statutes, right, give us a ceiling where our rights can rise, but in the federal case in a lawsuit is problematic. I also did say
not to skip. I'm sorry. Let me just ask. So you're saying not to skip local court?
Local court is the most important court for our people.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure I'm being clear on what you're conveying is all. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Local court, city and county court is where we can control governments, right? Because that's where people are. We can vote in people who have our interests. In the federal courts, right, we don't have any control over the federal court, right? We don't have any control over Congress, and we don't have any control over the Senate, right? So the problem with HR 40 is set in Congress for 35, 36 years because it couldn't get passed in Congress because of the numbers of our people in Congress and the Senate are very small. Only ever exists only ever 3 to 4 black senators, and some of those senators don't have our interests. In the Congress, there are because of city government electing city officials, and we have about 254 black congressmen, right? But that's not enough for the 560 or so congressmen. The white majority, their votes we are always outvoted, and then some of unfortunately those black congressmen are not necessarily on our side. So the whole reparations movement has moved to local reparations. Mm-hmm. So is there any other questions before I begin to talk about some things? I try to be quick because I think that you have a lot of questions. I'm not a lawyer, but I have represented myself in federal court and state court on discrimination. And I ended up with an agreement, right? So it was dismissed without prejudice in federal court. I decided not to go back to federal court because they didn't want to deal with my city human right law issues. So I decided not to go back there, go back to state court. So I went to state court where I had an agreement. So I have done the full course, represented myself in federal court, and I've helped at least 4 people in federal court or EOC proceedings, which I do not have the capacity anymore to do it. Though I am right now, believe it or not, involved in my last matter, but this matter has to do with someone calling a board member in my community a nigger, and I decided to help that board member because of if I let the issue of nigger go, then that becomes case law, and that allows anybody to call out people nigger. So I decided to take that issue, right, as a paralegal. So what I was trying to do is, let me just go over here. If I could share my screen, let me just pull it up. Maybe I can share my screen. Yes.
Go ahead. Sorry. You getting ready to and as Reggie is sharing his stream, y'all, again, welcome to everybody coming in. We appreciate each and every one of you. We want to get you guys in on the questions after he does do his presentation, but please hit the like button as he's pulling up his slide.
Thank you. So let's see if it came up, and I'm going to share it in a second. Let me just get to the part.
And Reggie, they're asking some really good questions in the chat. So I'm excited to hear what they have to say when, after you're done, because they're making some good points and they're asking some really good questions.
I don't doubt that, but for example, before I start, because I just need to center myself. Are they asking legal questions?
No, they're going off of what we're talking about. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I'm
sure talking about the law.
Right. Okay, Reggie. Okay. So did you pull up?
So now I just want to deal with because I was going to pull it up, but now I want to stop and deal with some of the questions. So give me a question.
No, because Reggie, listen, no, okay, so like Freedom told you, normally how we flow is like when we have guests on, they don't necessarily do presentations, like we kind of go back and forth. We ask questions for the first 45 minutes and then we ask the people to start hitting the link. So because ultimately that's the most important thing, right? For people to kind of express themselves and ask questions to the guests. So what we're saying is you have all rights. We would love to hear your presentation, and then after we'll open the floor so people can start asking their questions.
Yeah, it's very important that we hear your presentation so they'll have questions to ask.
But I was going to start.
Yes, go right ahead.
Then Dot said that there's a lot of important questions, and I said, are they law related? And so I will stop because I'm interested in what you're interested in, our community's questions. So if you can help me, Dot, give me a legal question that they asked.
Okay. I would prefer for them to hit the link and ask it themselves. What I'm saying to you is they're engaged, right? Like they're very engaged with the conversation. So we want to hear what you have to say. So
feel
free to share.
Please, Reggie, could you drop your the link that you want us to hear, please?
Okay. I was gonna do that. Give me a second. All right. So let me give you an example of what happens in local reparations. So let's just bring this up. If I can move this to here. Okay. So we go here. There it goes here. Okay.
I like
Great.
that question too.
So here we go. So normally, the people that actually do the work, right? And I'll just show about 6 minutes of this, and I'll move on. The people that do the work, they're engaged in the government. They're engaged in local politics, city town hall meetings, right? They engage with their local officials, right? They're not engaged on YouTube, right? that's not where they're engaged. So let's just see where this is, and I'll show it to you. Okay, great. So share audio. Great. There you go. And let's just start here. Great. And so let's see what he has to say. Let me just turn up my volume. Okay, great. So here we go. So this is a Council Committee on Government Operations, Part 2, on reparations, and this was done in 2002. So this is almost 23 years ago. Okay, this is Councilman Perkins.
Johnson. Therefore, it'll be a two-person panel. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon. Would you each raise your right hand to be sworn in? Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes. Do so.
Thank you. Would you each state your name and affiliation for the record?
My name is Marianne Davis, and I'm representing my people, the African people, and no particular group I represent.
My name is Reggie A. Mabry. I'm representing my family and my people.
Thank you. Please proceed as you wish.
Good evening, council members. My name again is Reggie A. Mabry. I'm especially proud of the council members that called this important hearing on this date, Juneteenth, to begin the process that this city needs to do for reparations. I was born in segregated Virginia in 1965. I am the son of Alfred and Gloria Mabry, father born in Halifax, North Carolina, mother born in Newport News, Virginia. The grandson of Alfred E. Mabry and Lucinda Dickens, both born in Halifax County, North Carolina. I am the great-grandson of the sharecroppers, Walter Dickens and Betty Dickens, born both in Halifax County. I am also the great-great-grandson of the African captive, some of you call them slave, Jordan Dickens and his wife, Micah Dickens. I have in front of me the census records of the census records of my great grandfather Jordan Dickens, and in 1870, and I also have the census records of them in 1880, and I also have the 1860 census records where unfortunately the name stops and they become name of slave owners, number of slaves, their age, their sex, and their color, but no names.
Okay, so I'm going to push through this. So here I'm testifying to the city council, and then while this testimony, I was actually the last testimony, but for space, I wanted to move this up, and then I'll just pan through some of the notable people that was testifying on the same day. There's Howard Dotson. He's the head of the Schomburg Center for Research in Black Culture, making the case for reparations in the City Hall. This is the woman, Deirdre Pellman Farmer, who did the last reparations case. And so she is speaking. This is the case that went to federal court and they wrote that nasty decision, right, by her. And I just wanted to scroll through, see, I think this is another council person from Brooklyn testifying. And here is my teachers, Dr. Leonard Jeffries and Professor Small, testifying on reparations. And I will upload the whole thing on my site. So let me just stop sharing. So I wanted to, so in order to deal with reparations, in order to deal with reparations, you need some of the best minds. And so they had historians, they had council people, and then they had community people, and they had me to bridge the different generations, my generation and the generation following me, to kind of charge me with trying to continue the education of reparations. So thank you for letting me show that. I wanted to talk to you all about how reparations started. Um, does anybody know how reparations began? Does anybody? Can I? I'm asking that question. Yes. I don't hear you, Sister Freedom.
No, I don't really know how it got started. I'm very interested in how it got started and where it the first time it was started. I can imagine why though, you know.
Okay. So anybody else? So I know how to.
Reparations happened a few times in our history. There is an emancipation of 1862 of Washington, D.C., where I think maybe or 1863, where there was reparations paid out to slave owners, ex-slaves, people who chose to go to Liberia, things like that. So there was some form of reparations paid after slavery. I'm not in D.C.
Mhm. Okay. Anybody else? Anybody from the chat?
I have a question. I have another question. Uh, so when we talk about reparations, right, and like the legal ramifications of it, I think we need to kind of get into the historical background of where that even came from, and kind of dig in regards to, like, General Sherman's order number 15, order number 3, for example, because ultimately that 40 acres and a mule, that slogan that became so popular and that is associated with reparations, that's where it started, right? And from a legal standpoint, it was rescinded. The order was rescinded, right? For that population of our demographic. So I would love to hear I guess, like, your opinion around that. Maybe you can quickly break down what General Sherman's order number 15 is, what it stipulated, what it stated, how it sort of set the ground rules, right, for this talk of reparations, to start for the freedmen.
Okay, so the freedmen at this point, it has nothing to do. That term does not exist at this time period. Uh, the freedmen term we find it would later in an Emancipation Proclamation, where they created the Freedmen Bureau Act, and then they talked about the freedmen. The General Sherman order was a military order where they were trying to convince black folks um, who were enslaved to join the army, the union, to join the Union Army in this fight of the Civil War. And so it never was meant for all of our people. It was only a military decision for that time period. There's more details in it, but but it was never meant for all of our people. And so people pick it up and they in fact use it, but that's because they just don't understand that it was only for a military decision so that they would not lose ground. The reparations really began when after the Civil War, when the white planters whose plantations were to appease the white planters, and so they were given compensation, right? Because they had great harm. So I don't know if I want to really call it reparations, but they was given compensation for the lands that they were losing and the slave labor.
Were they the Quakers, Reg?
So,
Brother Reg? The
huh?
Quakers?
No, they were not they
Mhm.
were not the Quakers. These were general
Abolitionists.
people. All the plantations in the South. They was petitioning the government for we've lost everything, and we lost our labor, and so the government began paying them off, and so the concept of it's more compensation. Reparations really, I believe, comes with a woman named Callie House. And so let me introduce Callie House. She actually, there was a white man that had created a pamphlet on trying to lobby Congress to give white people reparations. And Callie House and others, they chipped in and they bought this this piece of this pamphlet, and and of course the white man is selling it to black people too, selling it to everybody. And then Callie House, she read it. She read it. This is after the Civil War. She read it and she said, no, we have to do it for ourselves. So she was interested in finding out how to lobby Congress to do a reparations bill, And so the reparations for us really formally started with her. So let me just see what I can share on Callie House.
But do you think the reason why reparations for our people has been so difficult is because the legal document or the legal order, the decree that was made, right? That pretty much slogan being 40 acres and a mule was rescinded. So because that order was rescinded and it wasn't honored, do you think that might play a role or be a cause as to why, it's so difficult now?
No, I think that again, it was a military order and it didn't represent all of our people.
Mm.
Can we go over the general order number 15?
Sure.
Or, you know what? I can do that after. Play what you wanted to play. My apologies.
Right.
I can do that after.
No,
I'm interested in seeing that, Dots. I really am interested in seeing that because I always thought, Brother Reggie, that the reason why reparations wasn't given to our people because enough of our people weren't standing and fighting together to get it. Did you ever have that as a thought, Sharice? It's not a lot of us that are fighting for reparations. We're like sitting at home doing whatever and not having our minds on the fact
that's why I'm here to try to so she brought it up. Go ahead. So this is in Georgia. This is a general. This is a standing order in general in Georgia. It's one general. There are many generals. This has to do with a population in Georgia, not all of our people. But go ahead, read it.
Okay. So yeah. All right. So number one. So this is Sherman's field order. Okay, you guys. 1865. So number one, the islands from Charleston south, the abandoned rice fields along the rivers for 30 miles back from the sea, and the country bordering the St. Johns River, Florida, are reserved and set apart for the settlement of the Negroes now made free by the acts of war and the Emancipation Proclamation of the United States. So this is not just talking about those who, the Negroes, quote unquote, who fought in the war, right? That first, number one, that first bullet made clear that they're addressing, in this field order at least, they're talking about the Negroes that were made free by the acts of war and the Emancipation Proclamation. Before I continue though, Reggie, I would love to ask you this about number one. The abandoned rice fields along the rivers for 30 miles back to the sea, those abandoned rice fields, who were they cultivated by?
They were cultivated by African people who were enslaved.
Okay, so let's continue. Hold on.
But let's stop at number one. Let's stop right there, and we don't have to go too much further. This is only for this particular section in Georgia and those groups of people, and not for all African people. So when I talk about reparations, right, and I talk about city and state reparations, this would be an issue for local reparations in Charleston because you actually have an order that was rescinded, but that is not for all of our people.
No, I understand your distinction, right? From Charleston South to, I think, the tip of Florida, if I'm not mistaken. But let's continue. At Beaufort, Hilton Head, Savannah, Fernandina, St. Augustine, and Jacksonville, the Blacks may remain in their chosen or accustomed vocations. But on the islands, which are the Sea Islands, as you know, Charleston, and in the settlements hereafter to be established, no white person whatever, unless military officers and soldiers detailed for duty, will be permitted to reside. And the sole and exclusive management of affairs will be left to the freed people themselves, subject only to the United States military authority and the acts of Congress. By the laws of war and orders of the President of the United States, the Negro is free and must be dealt with as such. This is a very bold order. Okay, he cannot be subjected to conscription or forced military service, save by the written orders of the highest military authority of the War Department under such regulations as the President or Congress may prescribe. Domestic servants, blacksmiths, carpenters, and other mechanics will be free to select their own work and residence, but the young and able-bodied Negroes must be encouraged to enlist as soldiers in the service of the United States, to contribute their share towards maintaining their own freedom and securing their rights as citizens of the United States. Now, number 2 also is key because, again, right, it's delineating and it's making a distinction in terms of classification, right? Like no white person, whatever. And after I read this, I really want to go into that piece, right? Like, sort of how did Europeans become white in this country? Because we have an idea that, you know, if you were quote unquote white in color, that meant that you were not a slave, you were not an indentured servant. That meant that you probably was a slave owner, and we know that's not true. So a lot of this, the truth is always right in front of us. I just think that's very interesting. Negroes so enlisted will be organized into companies, battalions, and regiments under the orders of the United States military authorities and will be paid, fed, and clothed according to law. So they're talking about once you're enlisted, this is what you get. Okay. And settlement and procuring agricultural implements, seed, tools, boots, clothing, and other articles necessary for their livelihood. Mm-hmm. And whenever 3 respectable Negroes, heads of families, mm-hmm. shall desire to settle on land and shall have selected for that purpose an island or a locality clearly defined within the limits above designated, the inspector of settlements and plantations will himself, or by such subordinate officer as he may appoint, give them a license to settle such island or district and afford them such assistance as he can to enable them to establish a peaceful agricultural settlement. I don't want to keep on. Do y'all want me to finish reading this? Let's go to number 4. Okay.
Well, I mean, I would like, with so far what you've read, I would really love to hear his opinion on it.
Okay.
Well, my opinion is the same. That is the same. This is a military agreement that was later rescinded, right? But it is evidence that there was such a contract that could be dealt with state law. It does not deal with all of our people, and so this has. Well, it does. It's making an agreement. So it's not necessarily reparations because, first of all, it's 40 acres and a mule. Look, you once they said mule, you needed to laugh because mules don't multiply, right? A mule dies, right? It can't multiply. So 40 acres and you get 40 acres and 1 mule, right? And the mule is going to die in 15, 20 years and you ain't going to have another mule, so you're going to have to buy. My point of this is, do you think this is reparations, or do you think this is a contractual agreement? Do you think this is reparations for repair of what they have done to our people, or is this just uh, portioning out land? Do you think that this is repair for what they did for our people? That leads to the word reparations. Yes or no?
I there's not enough money they could give, so I'm sorry, I'm moving the
So
chair.
I don't think that this is
I
reparations.
don't think so either. I think it's compens maybe compensation. I don't know. I don't know. It just doesn't sound too much like reparations, but you can say it's reparation because they're giving you some money to build up yourself.
But why though? That's the reason why. If it's not reparations, then why?
Yeah.
Why are they doing that though? Think about that.
What? Oh, so we have to go into the full conversation on what reparations is, but this is a contractual agreement to give these people some land and a mule, but no payment for themselves or their past ancestors for the work. So what they're doing is that they're appeasing the people and our people, and that they're also using this is to get them into the military, right? So that they can use them for protecting their own lands. But once you're in the military, you could be redirected to do other things like fight the Indians or go to other sections. Once you're in the military, you're the military property. So this was a way in which to get uh, to contract with the parents. It's like the parents selling their children. We want you to encourage your children now, right? You're going to get your 40 acres, but we want you to encourage your children to join our military so that we could do what we feel with them.
Then why was it rescinded?
Oh, because white folks, because
They had enough of niggas. They had no
Actually,
real
they came
talk.
over here. Yeah, I agree with you. I agree with you.
no, it wasn't rescind. It wasn't. It wasn't rescind. It wasn't rescinded. That it was rescinded because it was making the white folks in the area mad because the white folks didn't want settlement by black folks. So I just have I can understand what you said, but you have to understand that white people wanted that land because they felt that land was their land, right? Not the the American Indians and Native Americans, nor black folks. So this will lead into a whole nother period, which we call the Black Codes and Jim Crow, right? Where any gain that we got was rescinded by the population and their agents in Congress. So what I wanted to do is talk to you about the beginning of real reparations, because this is not real reparations. This is a contract for the purposes that I said, and it had no legal
A question.
bearing, but except for in the state of Georgia, in that particular area, and that could be revisited as a reason of a false promise to break some of the obstacles that we face in court.
It just seems like every
Remember?
other. I'm sorry. I'm
Oh,
sorry.
go ahead,
Go
Freedom.
ahead. No, it just seems like everybody else that asks us for some form of reparations for discrimination, or they get reparations in some type of form. They get it, and it seems like they purposely don't do it to the original copper man of this land. I mean, it's like, or even Africans, if you want to say it like that, for the few that made it over here. It's like they purposely don't give it. They find all kinds of reasons not to give it to us. And that's why I keep bringing up, is it not enough of us fighting for the reparations? And that's, I'm sorry for long and winded it. I just
No,
feel
it's
like
not
not enough of
that
us.
at all. You are fundamentally right, and so built into law or latches that they can escape. And in this particular context, they in Georgia, they escaped this, but in state law we can revisit it. So what I want to do is I want to show you uh, real reparations.
Yeah. Can I just say, can I ask, I guess, like, just say one
Sure.
more thing, just a
Sure.
clarification, because
Mhm.
somebody else had asked this question. So remember when I had asked you, when I read the first one about the abandoned rice fields along the rivers, right? And I had asked you that question, like, who abandoned these rice fields, right? Like, who cultivated? And you mentioned the Africans. But we know that there's been certain periods of time. So like the King Philip's War, when we're talking about these quote unquote great migrations that take place. So you have the King Philip's War of 1675, and then you have General Andrew Jackson, right? Who pretty much pushed through the Indian Removal Act, a lot of those indigenous tribes off the land in 1812, right? And pushing the tribal people off their lands, right? In Georgia, in Mississippi, in Alabama, those weren't Africans.
Mhm.
Those weren't Africans, right? And so if slavery ended in 1865, technically, so the story goes, right, that freedom didn't come until then. So it couldn't have been just the Africans. It couldn't have been, because this order was written in 1865. They were still technically slaves. So when I asked you that question about the abandoned rice field, I'm asking that for a reason. Because
Well,
I think,
I,
you know,
I want to answer that, and I want to just get
yes, I
back
would love
to
to
it.
hear.
Okay, so a lot of the rice industries, the rice farming, it
Mhm.
came how can I say it was done by Africans. It was that kind of economy industry, right, was a new thing to America, and the a lot of the rice farmers were from places in Africa. The Native American groups, right? Now they had two strategies. One, they would not work as slaves. They would run away. They would feign sickness, uh, or they would fight, right? Or they would fight. So when I say it was largely African, that's because of the industry and who tended to the rice fields. And so there's lots of materials on innovations by Africans, but
Mhm.
all this has nothing to do with reparations.
Well, it sets the foundation, this general order number decree, because you were talking about, you were making clear about they're not talking about everybody, or they're talking about a certain group of people. So I just wanted to get clarity on that because I think that's important. That's all.
Wait, so brother Reggie, are you saying that it's not possible for a rice export economy to have existed in the Americas without the input of rice growing cultures of Africa?
No, I'm not saying that. What I am saying is that the economy in that area and and the sea islands, the Gullah Geechee, all that stuff was African people.
Mhm.
And then there was two slaveries. There was the legal slavery up until 1808, and then there was the illegal slavery after the act to end the importation of Africans. And so the population that I'm largely talking about is in this area is African, and even in the first document that that our good sister showed, who Sherman encountered were Africans, right? And
Mm.
so that's black and white. So what I'm trying to do, what I'm
Not
trying
really,
to,
Reg.
I
huh?
just think the assumption is that they're
Not
Africans,
really.
you know.
Okay.
Well,
Yeah.
but even though now, okay, so let me just nip this into the bud, right? I really have to do this because um, there's two in America. There's largely three groups. There's white folks. There is whatever you want to call them, Native American or American Indians, right? That's a fight between those groups, right? And then there is the African. Now, after the Marshall Trilogy, right, they created a Bureau of Indian Affairs, and that those Indians who wanted to stay on tribes or be connected to tribes, they got land, they got federal protection, and they became sovereign, domestic dependent sovereigns, right? They can manage their lands, they can have their own governments. The other groups of people who did of the people who, whatever you say on this land, right? They if they didn't go to their tribes, right, then they became citizens of the United States. And being a citizen of the United States, you're in jurisdiction as citizens of being a citizen. So then you have that departure. No matter, I'm not going to argue today because I came on to talk about reparations. I'm saying that the Native American Indian populations, they got a form of reparations. I'm saying our people, the ones that didn't go to the tribes, no matter if you think that we are those people, I'm not arguing that. I'm saying that those that did not go into the tribes, and probably for very good reason, because many of those tribes enslaved Africans, but for very good reasons, the rest of them were citizens of the United States. And even after the Civil War, right, when they created the Freedmen Bureau, right, the Freedmen Bureau included African people, Negroes, colored, right, who the Native Americans did not want to free, right? The Freedmen Bureau gave support and help to them. So, but none of that helps us today with reparations. That is one of the problems. So I am going to talk about, I'm trying to talk about, have been trying to talk about how true reparations, the true reparation movement started.
Yeah, no need to be offended, Reggie. We're just having
I'm
a
not
conversation.
offended.
That's just
I'm
how
not-
we,
I'm not-
that's our flow. Wait, hold on, Reggie. Hold on. That's just how we flow. We're having a conversation. That's all. But
I'm not
it's your show,
offended.
so let's continue
It's
on.
our show, but I'm not offended. What it is that what it is, a very focused person, right?
Oh,
And
okay.
when there are issues that have nothing to do, okay, so let me just step back. You are saying that this has something to do with reparations. You are saying that this is where reparations began.
Well, the
And
slogan, the 40 acres and a mule, which is associated with reparations here in America for our people. Absolutely. I don't see how you cannot mention that document, right? In terms of like the historical, I wouldn't say precedent, but in terms of like, it's setting some foundation of where those slogans came from. And I do think it's important that we, kind of dig deep and unpack and actually look at what that order said, right? So that we're all clear. That's all that is. But we can continue on.
wait, no, that's why I'm focused. So,
Yeah.
It was a military order. It was rescinded, right? And it did not give compensation for the murder, did not give compensation for the free labor. It did not give any compensation for that. All it did was a contract to give land for the purpose of the United States military to absorb Black folks into their military to get, because basically free labor, right? And that did not have anything to do with all of our people. It is a precedent and important to Georgia, but not to North Carolina, not to South Carolina, not to Virginia, where I'm from, right? Not to any of those places, right? Tennessee, up and down in Missouri, had nothing to do with the other generals that were making different type of contracts. It was one contract, and the problem is if you put it in a history, in a historical thinking of our history, there's reasons why they would not want to honor that because of the white population. They was doing a kind of kind of a walk uh, between white outrage and what they were trying to give blacks as some type of compensation, and also to militarize them. So there was so I have to ask you, and then I can continue. That 40 acres of the mule, did that have something to do with all of our people or just the people of Georgia?
No, of course not. But no, of course it didn't have to do with all of our people, because now we're getting into like those different classifications of people and how they came out, right? So that question is sort of loaded because I can't just answer it straight. Of course not, right? But the reason why, again, and also the fact that it starts out with the abandoned fields, right? Who were they abandoned by? But like, where do these people? So I think that in terms of digging and unpacking, I think the conversation is very, very important. So that's why I brought it up, and that's why I wanted to share it. But again, it's your show, Reggie. So yes, let's continue on to reparations in 2024.
Let me ask you this, Reggie. So just a small question. And soon we'll let if it's okay with you, we'll let people from the chat come up.
No, I didn't even present.
Okay, that's fine. No, I'm gonna let you present, and then if we have to, we'll do another show and when people can come up. But listen, this one I wanted to ask you. When you just said it was simply just for Georgia, so every state has to do their own, like every state has to have their own present, present their own asking for reparations. Because that's why I keep saying enough people in different places aren't doing it. So that's what I'm trying to ask. Is each state has to do their own for reparations for whatever reasons?
Okay, so we have a republic, so-called, and we have states, right? We have the unified states, and every state has its own set of laws.
Mm-hmm.
And so there are states that are in the South, and then there's northern states with different circumstances.
Right.
Right. So, so every state has a constitution, and it has a way in which to manage its lands and its people and things like that. Right. And then all of the states were not states where there was slavery. You
Right.
have and then thank you, and then you have the northern states, from Delaware on, right, which you are familiar with, right,
Mm-hmm.
that were free states, and then you have some. So and then even in the South, you had places like in South Carolina and stuff like that, where people were not enslaved. Uh, where people were not enslaved. You had free people because of a number of situations, being the children of the master, being good Christians, and et cetera, et cetera. So you had free people in Louisiana and South Carolina and other places. And they were
not just about slavery, it could be about land too as well, right?
Well, interesting. Usually when you're granted land, you need a labor force. And so a lot of the free Christians that became landowners, free black Christians, uh, they ended up having to go to the market and buy themselves some labor, which were and basically enslave uh, um, other black folks. So who certainly those who were not a Christian or didn't seem that Christians wanted them, and these are Africans coming in. Saltwater Africans, Africans from the Caribbean, fresh Africans, saltwater Africans as they're called, and so they wouldn't fit well in the church where even the black folks had the upper pews and the white folks had that those groups of Africans were for their purposes better off as laborers.
Okay.
But when we get to reparations, and it's your decision. I mean, I mean, I did come on this show to talk about reparations,
Right, right.
and
That's what
I'm
we're talking about. That's what
crystal
we're talking about. Mhm.
crystal clear about who started reparations and how. And for this time period, I was, we don't want to go on all night, and I understand, and I
Right,
can do my
definitely.
own show, but
And this is a very good start. Now, the next question I wanted to ask you, and if Sharice didn't have a question, was all right. You already pretty much told us why we feel, that we deserve reparations from our, from them coming over here, invading the land, stealing the land, enslaving the people that they captured through war and things of that. And I still feel like we deserve reparations. I want to know, do you feel as though that because we have we have our mental state of mind have been tortured and switched
okay.
up, changed from them coming over here invading. My thing is always that the things that they said that they did to African people, they actually did to us, the people that was already on these lands prior to the Africans even coming over here. The small bit that did come over here, they actually stole from us. They actually stole everything from us. But that's my opinion about it. But do you believe that we deserve some type of reparation, being so everybody else is getting it for other reasons? Like, did you
I
like
showed you difference than everybody else. I actually went back to 2002 and showed you that I was testifying for
I
reparations.
mean, now I'm talking
So
about now.
wait. So no, that was the question. So of course now, because I still work on reparations, and
Okay.
I still work on trying to educate people on what is there. So I talked about local city and county reparations,
Hmm.
right? I talked and I was trying to show you the federal case where we failed. So in order for me, and I've written a article on reparations is dead, on how to resurrect it.
Hmm.
And so the very reason why I'm on this show
Hmm.
was to try to unpack reparations, which I
Okay.
haven't been able to do.
Well, I'm sorry. I'm not going to ask another question. I want you to do it. I want you to unpack it. If nobody else has a question, I want you to do that. I really, because this is important to me. So I'm sorry, because this, with this subject, it's a lot of questions. So please do not take offense, because it wasn't, that's not what it's meant.
No,
So
it's not. It's not that. It's I'm not taking offense. I'm just being very in the time. I'm just trying to be very, very narrow and try to answer your questions because I think that I respect your questions, but I do think that there's some things that you actually should know
okay,
um, that maybe you don't know. So let's just start here. Anybody know who Callie House is? Say yes or no.
no, I don't.
Okay. Uh, Dots does know who Callie House is, right? And Sharice, do you know who Callie House is? Okay. Nisha?
No.
Okay, great. So, Dots, who help us out with who I know is the mother and founder of reparations movement, Callie Guy House. Tell us what you know.
Second, Reggie. Can you give me a second, Reggie? Freedom, you know what I'm doing. So give me a second.
Reggie, why don't you just go ahead and tell us, because that has to do something real
Okay.
quick.
Okay, so fine. So great. So let's start here and I'll pull up this. Let me just pull see if I can pull her up. Yeah, I'll just start here. I'll tell you about her and then I'll pull her up, right? Okay, so here it goes right here. So okay, so I heard about her a long time ago by Dr. Clark and Professor Scobie, but I didn't do a lot of work on her. And then I was preparing for um, uh, a talk on reparations and where it happened. And so then I did a deeper dive on Callie House. So She was born in slavery in 1861, was a pioneering figure in the African American reparations movement. Despite her humble beginnings as a washerwoman and seamstress, House became the driving force behind one of the earliest organized efforts for ex-slave reparations in the United States. Right? The birth of the reparations movement. In the late 1890s, House founded National Ex-Slave Mutual Relief Bounty and Pension Association, and this organization had two main objectives: to petition the government for pensions for former slaves, right? To provide mutual aid and support for its members. So she did two things. She decided to petition the government, right, for pensions, meaning unpaid labor, compensation and labor for former enslaved. And she also began what we probably know as the black insurance business in that area, because I mean there are other areas that they were actually beginning insurance type, but she called it mutual aid. House strategy was ingenious. She traveled extensively, primarily through churches, to recruit members and other signatures for petitions. So her thing was she had learned to lobby, so then she's going to lobby Congress. So she needed to collect petitions. So she founded an organization, and that organization rapidly grew, and she amassed 300,000 members across the country. So 300,000 ex-enslaved Africans and their families, right? And she garnered many of these petitions, right? The federal government, alarmed by the movement's growth, began to surveil and obstruct House's efforts. They sent to inspectors to spy on her meetings. They issued orders preventing the organization from using the mail system. So later, Garvey will be charged with mail fraud. Before Garvey was charged with mail fraud, Callie House was charged with mail fraud, and she ultimately was incarcerated, right? Because the federal government saw that this is a problem, even though she's doing something that's very legal, collecting petitions. But they're basically saying you can't collect these petitions or do anything within our mail system, right? So then they accused House of fraud, claiming she was deceiving people into believing the government would actually provide pensions. So the government said that, no, we're not going to provide any pensions, any relief, right? And so why even deceive your people, because we're not going to do it. So that's why she was incarcerated. So undeterred, she continued to work. She hired lawyers now with the monies that she raised to lobby Congress and introduce pension bills. She initiated a lawsuit that went to the Supreme Court challenging the government's refusal to distribute cotton tax money to former slaves. Despite losing the case and facing increased persecution, House remained committed to the cause. Legacy impact. Although House was eventually imprisoned for over a year on fraud charges, her work laid the foundation for future reparations movements. Many of her organization's members later joined the Marcus Garvey movement, right? So her movement, people, was absorbed into the Garvey movement. Her efforts inspired figures like Queen Mother Moore, right, who became the next key figure in the later reparations movement that carried on today, leading us to HR 40. The legacy of her work can be traced to various civil rights reparations movements up to the present day. Callie House's story is a testament to the power in grassroots organization and enduring struggle for justice. So I don't have to read that. So now, so do you have any questions? Okay, so what I want to do is let me just show you who she is, where you can get some more information on Callie House, because it was this Black woman, right, who began the reparations movement. So let me see. You can go to Dr. Mary Frances Berry and her book, My Face is Black is True, right? And she wrote the definitive work on Callie House's whole life, and you can see um, uh, Dr. Barry talk about Callie House, who's a forgotten figure for good reason, right? For good reason, that they don't want to talk to her because she has the evidence that our people petitioned legally, went to Supreme Court on repayment for Africans who were enslaved and demanded their how can I say demanded compensation. So let me just stop the screen and pull up where the people can in fact go. So Callie House's work began the legal uh, so Callie House started the legislative and federal suit issue on reparations. So she had multiple strategies. So the talk is here, and I'll just share the screen and I won't play it, but you can, in fact, where is it? Right here, Callie House, My Face is Black is True. And this video right here will deal with Dr. Barry's work. This is not Dr. Barry, this is Dr. Barry here. So Dr. Barry here. So she begins the reparations movement, the strategies for the reparations movement. What Sherman did was, that was not Black led, that was a decree. The Black reparations movement started with Callie House, and here is a picture of her. See if I can pull up a picture of her. Okay, Callie House. And see if she comes up. Yeah, so let's here. So stop screen, share screen. So the reparations movement has multiple parts to it. It has we tried the federal suit way, that did not work. We we are trying local reparations in places like New York, where New York, Illinois, and I can name all the other places that they are doing. But this is the woman, so you should all bookmark her name. And this is where the strategies of reparation actually came from, Callie House, to get pensions for ex-slaves. Then the reparations movement kind of broadened. Then we ran into a major problem when we decided to do a modern reparations case. In a modern reparations case that I want to show you is where the federal government used all of its tricks to keep us from being compensated for reparation, no matter what you call yourself. It doesn't matter what you call yourself. What matters is that we today, based on federal law, cannot sue for our ancestors' disenfranchisement. So I will stop and maybe answer some questions or listen to your comments.
No, we want you to finish so we can start having start having people in the chat who have questions so they can come up.
Okay.
So, I think Sharice did have a question. Didn't you, Sharice?
And I think Sharice was going to wait until he gets through with his presentation.
Yeah, I just wanted to wait until he was finished and, give his, give him his space to say everything that needed to be said before I just start piling questions on him.
Right.
Yeah, it's a good topic. It's an interesting topic.
Yeah, it is. It is. Because it's interesting when you say that we can't sue for our ancestors, but I feel like we're still going through the same thing. It's just in different ways. Jim Crow, whatever it is, you know what I mean? There's still forms of that, and we're experiencing that. So I think that that's interesting. I mean, I think that we have inherited a legacy of disproportionate struggle.
Right. That's what I was trying to say, Sharice. But I think he's saying you can do it, but not in federal court. You can sue for different things, but not in federal court. I'm just,
They done gave all this money to Israel and all these places. I mean,
Yeah,
it
yeah.
just gets
I understand. I understand our anguish because it's my anguish, and I've actually been doing the work. I've actually learned, sat at the feet, learn aspects of federal law, presented, and the problem is not that we have to be smarter. What we have is this obstacle called federal court. And so wanting to do something and actually doing it is two different things. A lot of people get over saying that we could, we should, we do, but who and who's smart enough, right? And how do we lay this down? And at the same time, when the people are actually doing stuff, do we help them or do we disrupt them? So people are actually doing reparations in local cities and states. But the strategy of suing the federal government, right? They have case law that will prevent us, no matter how we feel about it.
Mm-hmm.
No matter how you feel about it. So I'm saying get your feelings out of it. Understand what the obstacles are so you can strategize against the obstacles, right? So I believe that aspects of reparations is possible. I'm saying that in federal court, they have laid out in this case that I'm going to show you that they say in their lines what they will do and what is required. Well, do you want to see it or not?
Oh, definitely. I'm interested in
Absolutely.
push.
What's wrong, Brother Reggie?
Because this hits on everybody. We should all take heed to what you're saying because but the part that gets me is the African part. But other than that, I'm saying I'm just not concerned about what's going on with them. I think that if they want to get reparations, then they're the ones who we can't ask for reparations for them. We can only ask for reparations for us. They have to be the ones to ask for reparations for them. You know what I'm saying? If they feel like somebody owed them reparations, then okay, write up your little thingy and send it in and see what you get from it.
Okay.
Because and us over here as Americans who went through Jim Crow, who went through enslavement after you had stole the land from us and put us through war and hell over here, we should ask for reparations for for what we went through and what we can prove that we went through.
Not arguing with you.
Right. I know you're not. I know you're not. I just was making
not
that statement.
arguing at all with you. I am simply coming from another world of people that have to construct this, right? Mm-hmm. Or write about this, right? And talk about this to a population that are not YouTubers. Because if you haven't studied any law and you haven't studied Black studies, no matter what you feel about who we're talking about, we today cannot sue for our ancestors, no matter what you call yourself.
That's a problem.
Or your ancestors.
That is really a problem. That is a problem. Seriously, it is.
So what I'm trying to say is, feelings aside, right? I came on your show to show you what the facts are. And at the same time, I told you how it has shifted to local reparations, city and state. So I'm not saying that's not possible. I'm saying I'm going to try to show you the case law that our opponents will use against us. If our people are smart, you would know what the obstacles are, right? So that you could study to try to have some ways to cross the obstacle, which people like myself and other people have, right? We have them, but first, the general public needs to get out of their feelings and know what the law is. Most people who find themselves in any court, right, have to hire a lawyer. Lawyers are officers of the court. Ultimately, lawyers will stop, right, when they think that the court is pressuring them. They will stop, and they will convince you to settle, whether it's a criminal case or a civil case, because they can only go but so far because they have been warned. Then they will be getting contempt of court. And so the deck is rigged. So tonight, what I am trying to tell you is all these petty arguments about who we are and who we think our ancestors are, right? The oppressor feels that it's relevant. And so we went so far with this BS of divisive culture, then the president that most of you wanted, Donald Trump, is in office. And what did he do? Right? Before I do this, I'll show you this. So the president that Kamala, she's not our people. She's Indian. She's all of this. Okay, that was never the issue. Ever the issue. The issue was whether or not we could unite to that our population mattered to prevent Donald Trump coming on. And we had all these hustlers and people come on here and take you away. But guess what? Now we're getting bit. The Department of Justice issues a freeze for civil rights division. So that means all civil rights cases, right, have halted. It says the Justice Department has ordered the Civil Rights Division to halt much of its investigative activity during the Biden administration and not pursue any new indictments, cases, or settlements, according to the memo sent to the temporary head of the division that was obtained by the Washington Post. Right? So any of the police cases, all of those that was done by the Biden administration has been suspended. You have no civil rights right now. You have no place to go but your city and state for civil rights violations. This is the news. The letter instructs Kathleen Wolf, designated by Trump administration and supervisor division, to assure that civil rights attorneys do not file any new complaints, motions to intervene, agreed upon remand, amicus brief, or statements of interest. Cases that have already been filed would be subject to the discretion of the judge overseeing them.
Reggie, quick question. Are you, we have two people who came up on the panel. Are you willing to start taking questions? Always Win came first and then Jose Francis. Or did you want to show something else?
I always wanted to show and finish my presentation. I always wanted to do that.
Okay, so they'll wait, no problem.
Well, no, because he did say he said, well, I do want to answer a few questions. So
yeah, you did say that, Reggie. You did say that. So we're just following your instruction, but it's okay. But yes, so they can wait.
I'm gonna come back. I'm gonna come back to the court case where it says that we can't sue for our ancestors. So anybody else that wants to come on, if what I showed you was really, really important.
It is important, and it was.
That there are no new civil rights cases being filed, right? And to stop everything that you're doing, right? So all these cases that you see, like Breonna Taylor and all these other cases that are coming up for the same reason, police brutality and stuff like that. I was simply showing you what is going on today. But yes, bring them on and then allow me to close out, and then that's about it.
Okay.
Always Win, you was up here first. Welcome.
Hi, Always Win. How are you doing?
I'm good. Thank y'all for having me on, and I appreciate what y'all doing. Peace to your brother Reggie. I did have a question. I know you say you did work in reparations, and I just was asking, how can the inclusion of genealogy records and record correction be included in reparations bill to fix the historic erasure and misclassification of people we call African Americans or Black, and even some of those with indigenous ancestry that we classify as Black or African American. Like, should genealogy be included in this reparation bill?
Yeah. So when you in the early beginning of it, when I showed that I was testifying, swear uh, that I would tell the truth, and unlike a lot of other people who testified, I actually gave documents of my family. Uh, Documents of your family is very important for standing. So that way you could connect yourself to the people that you say that are harmed. You can't just call them ancestors, and you can't call them their nicknames. You have to show census records, which I did, and birth and death records, and then that helps with issues where whether someone should receive reparations or not. Well, our people, they largely, not every one of us, but largely want other people to do it for themselves instead of talking to grandma, great grandma, great granddad, auntie, right? We don't talk to them about family. We don't get our facts right. So we don't even know what you call a bill of particulars about harm. So things like housing discrimination and other types of discrimination that happen to grandma, great grandma, we don't know because we don't bother to talk to them and document it. And so you are absolutely right. Those people who can get any semblance of repair or reparations or the people best suited to show real documents, they go up front. They're the people that you would put as plaintiffs for any matter because why? They have standing in court. So great question. No
Now,
matter who you think you are, I don't care what you call yourself, copper, melanated, ADOS, all the FBA. If you can't show the courts or the legislative who you are in relationship to the harm of your family, get out of here.
But it's interesting that you say that though, because this idea of slavery is predicated in our textbooks. It's everywhere, right? So why is the burden of proof incumbent upon us, and why not upon them?
Because when the plaintiff, as a plaintiff, you have to, if you've ever been a plaintiff in any suit, you have to prove your case. So the burden is on the plaintiff to prove their case, not on the defendant. That's law.
I understand that, but if they're predicating a narrative in our history, and they're saying that this is our history, that this is something that occurred, that this is something that is legitimate, verified, documented, or whatever, what is the contention around that? Obviously, there's something missing here. If every time they're just shutting it out, it's a reason why, right?
Well, I don't
it's because, yeah, I mean, because this is what I want to get down to, because it's very, I don't want to get emotionally involved with it, and I try not to, because usually I try not to discuss reparations, but when I do discuss it, I always just wonder, like, I mean, you're teaching people this shit for generations since they're K through 12 school. And then you're saying, oh, well, you got to prove that you was a slave now? No, this is diabolical. It makes no sense.
Well, that's
the case.
Well, what it gets more hideous when you actually read the case law, right? When you actually read the case law, which at some point after I answer some of the questions, fine. But anybody who's in case knows, who's in court knows the plaintiff, whether it's defamation, whether it's even a criminal, that you have to prove your case. If you don't prove the case, there are people who we know in our communities or murderers did this, did that. So
it's accountability that has to be taken.
Say
because
what?
Accountability. Because if, like, once again, because I don't feel like you're answering me. I mean, I don't know. I don't feel like I don't know. You may be understanding what I'm saying. I mean, because to me, it kind of sounds like Judge Joe Brown, but What I'm
Don't
saying is,
talk about Judge Joe Brown, Cherie.
Don't come for judge
Do
now.
it.
I'm coming for the
Yeah,
judge. I
come for
know how
judge.
I feel about the judge, ladies. And I'm not against the judge. I'm because he's a judge. You know what I mean? I understand. So when I hear that kind of laws, legalese, rhetoric being spewed, I'm just trying to understand how is it legal on the other end to predicate a group of people as slaves and then turn around and say, oh, well, you need to prove it too. No, it doesn't make sense to me. So this is where I'm trying to understand. It's
Well, Teresa, I'm actually on your side.
with this. And
I'm
it's
actually I'm actually on your side.
yeah.
So the problem is that the issue is how do you get around the obstacles? First, know the obstacles, and then understand how you may get around the obstacles. Because this is how this it's a rigged deck. I've said it. It's a rigged game, right? They've already made us legal slaves, right? Even though the moral, we won the moral issue, but the legal issue is what they did. So then they have something called state sovereignty, right? And then they have another thing where they said in the federal court that you can't sue the federal court unless they give you permission to sue. They never give you permission to sue, right? And then on state court, there's state sovereignty, where whatever a state decides, it's the same thing like the federal court. You have to get permission from the state. You have to go to the attorney general and do some pre-work. And even though we know what was done to our people because it's well documented, part of it in their laws, it was legal. So then, if you want to do law, right, then you have to understand what the obstacles are. And then, even in our state reparations case, there's a reparations case in Evanston where where the people of Evanston studied reparations and decided on reparations and decided to give people payouts of $25,000. And a group of five white people, conservative people, lodged a complaint saying that it violated the equal protection clause, right? So right now this case is going on. They're trying to overturn the first successful reparations case. Now the question is for you and our panel and the people that's watching is what are the strategies that we can use to overturn, one, to have standing, right? To defeat this whole thing of tolling, that it happened 150 years ago, it happened 100 years ago, right? It happened even 50 years ago. How do we defeat statute of limitations, right? And even when you decided legislatively that we do this, how do you protect it? So the issue is, the reason why I'm on this show is to talk about what has been done to us legally in coding, and saying right now you cannot sue for anything that happened to your ancestors. And since the beginning of this show, I've been trying to show you what they have written. And I understand what you're saying, and it sounds crazy, but they made us slaves. And then they created a slave mentality, and also a very divisive characteristics in us, embedded in us, that you would vote no matter what, because a woman is saying that she's black and you don't believe that she's black, but you're going to vote for the person who is going to end all civil rights cases.
Okay, so who's next? Jose?
Good night.
Well, always when you finished.
Well, I was just asking. I know you was talking about. Well, my whole question was, like, in the reparations bill, I'm thinking more like a genealogy. The same way you got a food stamp office and a social security office in every neighborhood, you should have a genealogical center or that could help a person that don't know. Like, I know all us in the panel in the chat, we know about how to find our histories. But I meet so many people every day that don't have a clue. And if they could go to a place where they could like, hey, my ancestors, I believe they went through these type of things. I need some help. You know, they could go to this place and on the government's bill, on a taxpayer's dollar, get this done.
You're
So that's what I'm
correct.
saying.
Well, you're
Should that
correct.
be hard?
It should have been, watch this, it should have been encoded in the Freedmen's Bureau, right? That would have been a start. It should have been there. But what Callie House did was she actually got names of people who were enslaved, right? And so she had an organization of 300,000 people. So right then and there, part of it we could have done ourselves, but the government has no interest in helping us. The issue is all of our infighting. We can't help ourselves, right? What Booker T. Washington did with building, he didn't rely on so much of the government, right? Um, he convinced black people as a labor of love to do the labor to build these schools and houses and other institutions. I'm not saying he didn't have any help from white folks, but the government. But it was funny. Well, that's a whole nother stuff. Booker T. Washington was the person who helped bring in many of the Jamaicans and Caribbean people because he defeated the African exclusion measure. And a great scholar of ours, who's a woman, I like women scholars. Dr. Tyrene Wright, she is the one who let us know about this whole period where Booker T. Washington actually was the African American, the foundational Black American, as some of you want to call it, or someone native to this land, if he wasn't even African. That this person, he was the one who defeated the African exclusion measure and allowed for the immigration of Black folks. You're right. I do think that in our cities and states, county cities and states, we can create offices with our tax money, but don't expect any help from the federal government. Expect it from your local politicians. That's something that you are very smart. But we also have a let somebody else do it for ourselves mentality. But when it comes to buying a car or slick clothing, I'm gonna do that for myself. But everything else, I need somebody else to do it for us. We have to change our personality and characteristics. But you're spot on.
Jose, do you want to ask your question, or do you want Reggie to present the court case that he's talking about?
Well, I actually watched when he showed it on his platform. And what he's trying to say is if you go and read the court case, it will tell you exactly what you can and cannot do based on the law.
Right.
That's what he's trying to say. And I think that he also is saying that we have this fractional mentality that is blocking us from doing this. We want to push our own agendas, and that does not matter legally. The government doesn't care what you say about this group and that group, and that's what he's trying to say.
When has the government ever cared? I'm confused.
But
when has the government? I mean, because let's talk realismism. Shout out to Larry, right, brother Larry. When has the government ever cared? How many treaties? Pause. How many treaties have been rescinded? How many articles have not been honored? Like, what are we talking? It's interesting. I think it's so important because for me, at least, like I'm a grown woman. Listen, it's only so much of my mindset that's going to change. Ultimately, it's about the babies. Ultimately, it's about the Gen X's and the Gen Z's. Ultimately, it's about the 20-year-olds. It's about the younger generation. Let's be clear. And it's important to meet them where they are. So to have conversations and to allow people to question and to dig should never be taken as disrespect. And it should never be taken as like, oh my God, you guys don't even understand. No, we understand very well. Very, very well. So I think that's really key. And I think that's where the disconnect often lies between the older generation mindset and the younger generation. Because at the end of the day, our babies are the only ones that matter. I'm not trying to change your mind, Jose. You can't change my mind, right? It's the babies that matter. Let's be clear.
You invited the man on here to say something. If you're not going to let the man present the case, then what did you invite him on the platform for?
What? How did we not allow? Okay.
Now I'm asking the question.
Reggie, for the 10th time.
Whenever you're ready, is Jose new here?
I'm really trying. Reggie, for the 9th time or the 10th time, I think, you're more than welcome to present the court case.
I'm confused on where Jose was going. Like, I mean,
I don't know.
I thought you had a question, Jose. Because we all grown over here. That part. Yeah, we allowing Reggie to present, to ask. We ask him, can we ask questions? I don't know what part you missing, baby. Now we thought you had a question for our brother, who myself been knowing for very many years. Okay, we are not being disrespectful, and this is a very touchy and interesting and very important subject. So of course, everybody and their mama got questions about this, because we want to know how we can, go forward with different forms of reparation. Just like Brother Reggie said, there's different forms. Like the brother just asked the question, how even allowing us to use our actual genealogy, our actually names and stuff, is a form of reparations. And that's, it's very important. It just ain't all about money. It's about getting land back. It's about getting our name back. All of that are different forms of reparations. And he just said for different reasons. So we are picking Brother Reggie's head because he's been in this for a long time. You know what I'm saying? So it is very important to us, especially as mothers. We want to know what we have to teach our children in the future. So, allow us to do what we're doing. Okay. Sorry. Wait a minute. Sorry, Brother Reggie, if we're overpowered.
To the question, you can read the court case and it will explain to you exactly what you can and can't do. That is why.
He might be showing us something on one thing. There we go. Are you listening? Are you listening, Jose? Or are you just trying to have something to say? An accent with the name Jose. What's going on here? Do you have a question for our brother?
No.
Who graced us with his presence tonight?
No.
Go ahead, Brother Reggie, please, because Jose is getting on the big mama. Okay.
Yes, Reggie, we're here to learn. Teach us.
Yes, we are here to. Thank you, Dot. Thank you.
I apologize. I don't talk about the things that people want to hear, and so I just looked at the audience. The amount of people watching the audience, and I thought that more people would really want to understand about real reparations, but I think that people do the personality thing.
Don't worry about that. We want to learn. We the mamas on here. We want to learn.
Yeah, I think that people, but I'm just.
Don't worry about them. They say a lot of things that, let you.
No, I'm not even. I'm just looking at the amount of audiences when people do real work, right? Have real discussions with the greats, sit down and strategize and watch people try, and watch even great people get frustrated and lawyers bow their heads and walk out frustrated in these courts, and then have to go back to the people and then try to explain to the people, and the people say they want this and they want that, and the people, the community people that work hours and hours and do research and write studies and programs, and then it's like the thanks that those people get from our audiences when it's real work is problematic. We live in a fantasy world, unfortunately.
We are our worst enemy.
Well, I could say that better. And we're distracted on things that we shouldn't be distracted on. So let me do this. And Jose, he seen me present this before, and that it could have been real soft. I could have, because it's your show, I have to do two things. I have to answer some questions, right, and then get back and try to, at the same time, focus us on where the reparations movement started and what are some of the obstacles. And so finally, I'm getting ready to get to the point of the obstacles, right? And then once I give you the obstacles, then the magic happens. The magic, you take your feelings out. You see a real federal case. I can show you my federal. Well, I'm not going to show you my federal case, but you can look it up. It's Reginald A. Mabry. That's my name. Because I really can't talk about the case, but you could see the frustrations that I went through in my case doing it myself. So on this particular case, because it was a class action suit, it failed and the judge capitalized on every bad thought, everything that we didn't dot our T's and cross our T's and dot our I's on. The judge slammed us. So that's what I want to share. Okay, so let me show it. Let me just share screen and share screen. Okay, so the case is in regarding African American slave descendants litigation. Didra Farmer Pellman, who I showed, I'm not so sure. Didra Farmer Pellman was an African American from the start, right? She never said that she was. She could have been from the Caribbean, right? Doing a reparations case for people in the United States. She chose in this case to sue, in short, made the defendants mostly insurance companies that insured ships and the cargo, which was Africans.
People.
There were several other uh, federal cases on reparations that collapsed it to this case. Somebody got their mic open. So they collapsed it to this case. And a lot of times what they do that, they look at a case to see which case has the weakest arguments, right? And then collapse it to the case with the weakest arguments instead of the strongest arguments. And then it's up to the plaintiffs to say, no, we want this to be the model case. Nevertheless, they were going to dismiss the case, except for one of the defendants one of the plaintiffs that were combined had not agreed to certain requirements, so they did not dismiss it. And so they say right here, were it not for the hurdle suit, we wouldn't have to decide whether the district judge could have dismissed and transferred the suits had the parties not agreed. By filing a new complaint to his retaining them after completion of pretrial proceedings. But the hurdle plaintiffs did not agree, so we cannot duck the question. So if it wasn't for the hurdle case, they would have already agreed with the district judge. This is an appeal, by the way. The suits are a series of mostly identical cases, actions on behalf of all Americans descended from slaves, with whom one or more of the defendants or their corporate predecessors may have been directly or indirectly involved. The consolidated complaint, the hurdle complaint is similar, so that doesn't need to be discussed, blah, 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 right? So the defendants now, who have more rights, are companies or the successors. So the ancestors of the corporations, right? They how can I say, their thoughts are taken. So that is the frustration. That is definitely the frustration that we actually see from Sharice, right? And the frustration from all of us that the defendants or companies or their successors, right? Their ancestors that provided services such as transportation, finance, insurance to slave owners. And there's two of these defendants themselves were slave owners, right? Okay, so the predecessor of one of the bank defendants, one accepted 13,000 slaves as collateral. So now, in this case, the defendants, the companies that enslaved us, their rights are accepted, right? Or waived. Now, here is where the sticky part comes from, right? Let's say, okay. Okay, so now this is where he puts in his opinion. Okay, Okay. A case that sought reparations for the wrong of slavery would encounter similar obstacles, but plaintiffs have been careful to cast the litigation as a quest for conventional legal relief. That saved them. All they're asking the federal judiciary to do is to apply state law, right, plus one federal statute to the defendant's conduct, right? Okay. They face, of course, formidable obstacles, quite apart from the severely limited application of 1982, to name just one of the obstacles. So they start naming the obstacles. It is highly unlikely that antebellum laws in northern states were intended to confer financial or other benefits on the 21st centuries of the descendants of the slaves. So here's one of the issues. To name just one of the obstacles, it is highly, this is what the judge says, unlikely that antebellum laws in northern states were intended to confer financial or other benefits on the 21st century defendants of slaves. But the obstacles to the vindication of the plaintiff's legal claim have the form of a lease of conventional defense to a lawsuit. Okay, so now this is where it gets nasty. Okay, so if one or more of the defendants violated a state law by transporting slaves in 1850, and the plaintiffs can establish, watch this, if one or more of the defendants violated state law by transporting slaves in 1850, and the plaintiffs, that's us, can establish standing to sue, meaning that we are the people who have the rights to sue on behalf of our ancestors, prove the violation despite the antiquity, right, the particulars, establish that the law was intended to provide a remedy either directly or by providing the basis for a common law action for conspiracy, conversion, or restitution to lawfully enslaved persons or their defendants, because they're saying they're lawfully enslaved or their descendants, identify their ancestors, quantify damages incurred, and to persuade the court to toll the statute of limitation, there would be no further obstacle to the grant of relief. They're saying if the defendants did all of this, right, which is almost impossible, there wouldn't be any obstacles. But now they slam us. But we think that the district court was correct, with some exceptions to be noted, in ruling that the plaintiffs lack standing to sue. It would be impossible by the methods of litigation to connect the defendant's alleged misconduct with the financial and emotional harm that the plaintiffs claim to have suffered as a result of that conduct. So the plaintiffs, those who are suing today, the court is saying it's impossible for us to find to connect the alleged financial and emotional harm that we are talking about, right, suffered by the what was done by the defendants, right? Now they say she generally, well, the jurisdiction of slavery reparations. All right. So, for example, Edna is alleged to have written several insurance policies on slaves in the 1850s in violation of state law applicable to the company, and to have the ordained premiums from the insured, the slave owners. That we'll assume exceeding the cost of the insurance to Edna, its expenses plus the payment of proceeds if the insured event came to pass. The plaintiff argues that Edna's net income from the insurance was a wrong profit that the company should be ordered to restore to the plaintiff classes. So the plaintiffs, us, we're arguing that Edna's net income from the insurance was wrong and it should be given to us, right? Okay, then the court snowballs. If the insurance business was competitive back then and the plaintiff do not agree that it was not, Edna did not profit in an economic sense from the transactions of which the plaintiffs complain. So they're saying that this insurance company did not profit with no evidence. Its profit would just be its cost of capital, equity capital. Here, they lied, right? And they're basically already took the side of the insurance company and said that they were not profitable without citing anything. And in any event, it would have been distributed any profits from the transactions to its shareholders long ago. So even if they made profit, it would have been distributed to their shareholders. All that to one side, there is a fatal disconnect. Watch this. There is a fatal disconnect between the victims, meaning the people that were enslaved, no matter what the hell you call them, because what you call them is irrelevant. Who you think your ancestors are irrelevant in this case. The labels, what the court is saying, there is a fatal disconnect between those people that were enslaved and the plaintiffs. That's us who are suing. When a person is wronged, he or she can seek redress. And if he wins, his descendants may benefit, but the wrong to the ancestor is not a wrong to the descendants. Let me read that again. When a person is wrong, our ancestors, no matter what label we put on them, right? He or she can seek redress. That's a lie. We could never seek redress in those courts, but that's what they say. And if he or she wins, his descendancy may benefit, but the wrong to the ancestor is not the wrong of the descendants. For if it were, say what?
No, I'm saying that's crap. They're crazy. Go ahead.
For if it were, then problems of proof to one side, statutes of limitations would be toothless. A person whose ancestor has been wronged 1,000 years ago could sue on the grounds that it was a continuing wrong and he is one of the victims. So then they went back a whole 1,000. They basically sneezed and snotted on us and said a person who was wronged 1,000 years could sue, but we're talking about 150 years, but they go back 1,000 years. So to muddy the case, the plaintiffs introduced another claim of injury by asserting that the defendants refused to violate their own state's laws doing business. And I don't want to read that. I just think I gave you a feeling of what they put in. They said a wrong to the ancestor, no matter what we are fighting name calling, right? They said, well, whatever your ancestor is, whatever you call them, family, is not a wrong to you. And you can't show a casual claim, right? It says, okay, so let me just see. Okay, what does this say? So then they play with us. That would have raised their costs, and by making slavery less profitable, might have reduced the amount of it, might not would, because a higher cost might simply have depressed the price of a slave. And had there been less slavery, the argument continues, some of the ancestors of the members of the plaintiff classes would not have been slaves, but instead free laborers, and they would not have been disposable income, part of which they might have saved rather than spent and left to their heirs. But the causal chain, the court is saying, the causal chain is the causation. What happened then at that moment, right? At that moment, right, is too long and has too many weak links for a court to be able to define that defendant's conduct harmed the plaintiffs at all. Let the plaintiffs, meaning you who are suing, right? You never showed standing. You never show how your individual ancestors was harmed. You was talking about a group of people, right? That's what the court is saying, right? You basically not showing how they have harmed your ancestor, right? And how they have harmed you at all, let alone an amount that could be estimated without the widest speculation. It is impossible to determine how much, if any, less slavery there would have been had the defendants not done business with slave owners. What effect a diminution of slavery would have had on bequests by ancestors of the class members, and how much of the value of the bequest would have been trickled down to the class members. Class members are us, right? Okay, so now they go and they do this. They do a lot of hypotheticals, no citations, no evidence, no connection to history, no nothing. Suppose a class member could prove that he was a descendant from one of the slaves insured by Aetna or transported by the Union Pacific Railroad, another defendant, or bought with money lent to the buyer by the predecessor of the J.P. Morgan Chase Bank, still another defendant, and that these transactions were illegal, and that the descendants of slaves are among the people whom the laws were intended to protect. Had he not been insured or transported or bought with a bank loan, how would the financial welfare of his remote descendants, watch this, how would the financial welfare of his remote descendants, that's us, be affected, right? Would the ancestor have been freed or perhaps never enslaved in the first place? As the plaintiffs stress, slavery was profitable. Is it conceivable that the slaveholders would have been unable to ensure transport? A lot of hypotheticals, they're free in a court to add these hypotheticals, right? But us fighting for these particulars is problematic. So my point is, and Jose Francis, knowing what I was going to say, was going to alert you to the fact, and then he spits on us. And again, if there were a legal wrong, it would not be a wrong to any living person unless they somehow the authorized representative to bring suits on behalf of their enslaved ancestors, right? So I think I want to stop, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Brother Reggie. Two Trap been waiting to ask you a question for a minute, so you came to a good little pause, so he can ask you that, and then we can keep going.
Yeah, I just want the audience, before he speaks, do you all know, based on this particular case, that you can't sue for harms against your ancestors? That's what I want to find out.
I just think that this court was giving you the runaround and giving your people the runaround, because I just think that, I mean, I understand what they are saying, but I think that there has been reparations given for survivors of like Japanese internment and other things, so I think that this analogy, I think it's just a specific shutout of us. And
right.
So I don't know.
It's like they'll find any reason not to give up. But like the Chinese people just got some money. You know what I'm saying? For whatever they said, eating the people homosexuality, they get money. I mean, whatever everybody else wants, they can get it. But when it comes to us, they'll find any reason. Well, at that time, they was okay with being called Negro. Well, at that time, they was okay with drinking out of an opposite fountain and going in the opposite bathroom, not ours. You know what I'm saying? Living in housing that we don't live in. They was okay with it at that time. So you can't sue for that. You can't. I mean, any reason that they can come up with. So yes, Brother Reggie, we do understand it. We do understand it, but we're gonna let the brother Toe Trap. Is it to say Toe Trap? Get his question in, because we're going to go ahead on and maybe make a part 2 for this, because we only got a certain amount of time on the StreamYard tonight. We have to make more time, so Brother Reggie, you never put your Cash App up, because I know we want to make sure you get some little something.
I will put on.
So could you put it in the chat for us, please? And we're gonna get this last question, because like Dart says, we gotta go ahead, because she got something to do. And y'all know I'm getting ready, because I'm great. Go on my cruise.
Congratulations.
Ready for the commanders to go.
Don't come back fat. Don't come back fat because people that go on
Oh
these cruises, they
God,
come back.
I'm already that fat to death, but okay.
This good man is coming for the championship, but I'm gonna keep it cute.
Okay.
We got it already.
I'm happy for us, man. I'm happy for my team. But anyway,
Yeah.
Two Trap,
Right.
Hey, sweet feather.
doing?
Where's she at? Is she? Oh, hey, sweet feathers.
Hey, boo. Go ahead, two trap. You've been waiting a minute.
I
Sorry.
know you're so patient with us.
Right. Can y'all hear me?
You a little low.
I'm low. Okay.
There you go.
All right. I'm gonna just say peace. Peace to y'all. Much love to y'all. I appreciate y'all. Thank you for having me on y'all panel. For brother Reggie, how you doing, brother Reggie? I got one question for you. All right, far as reparations go, for the people that's indigenous to this land, the Americas, what we call Americas, does reparations apply to us over here, or does it apply to it's like say we not victims of the transatlantic slave trade, and how can we what is reparations going to do for the indigenous people if we're not victims of the slave trade and we indigenous to this land? So when you speak on reparations, and is that like the end result of like what happens after reparations? Like if we get like when people get reparations, what happens after that? Like, because I had a hard time how to ask this question because I've been drinking, but
I think you're concise. Well, the people who are indigenous to this land that were not enslaved, the federal government had a solution. It's the Bureau of Indian Affairs, and it's what they gave them: the federal protection, the domestic dependent sovereignty, and land trust. They gave them land. For those people who are indigenous to the land who don't want to live on the tribal lands, right? Then you are citizens of the United States. So that means you don't have all those protections. So if you're indigenous to the land, right, and you don't, and then the Native Americans or American Indians or those indigenous people, if they don't accept you into their family, right, because they have something called the quantum blood laws, and they also do it with our history. If they don't accept you, then you are a United States citizen and you're subject to the Constitution. So that means you get what everybody else gets, except for our people who were enslaved never got what everybody else got.
okay. So you saying like people that, so you saying like when you say your people, you saying like what do you mean when you say your people? Like you talking like the transatlantic slave trade victims that came over.
I'm
That
saying
came from,
anybody who, anybody, and let me say a fifth time, anybody who is not accepted into the tribal groups of people, they are citizens of the United States. Anybody. So anybody, if you're not living on federal land, you're subject to the laws of the United States. If you leave federal law, if you leave your federal lands, in Native American lands, and you commit a crime, and you commit a crime in the United States, you're subject to the penalties of the criminal action in the United States. If you do that on Native American or Indian land or Native or indigenous land, then you're subject to that government. But if you are living not
because Native American is not the same as American Indian.
okay, I'm not arguing that. I'm saying that if you're not living on the land, right? Let me just say, because I hate to do this, because I'm really clear. If you're not living on their land, right? The land that they decided under the Marshall Trilogy to give those groups of people, without the names, if you're not living on what was given to those groups of people, you're living in the you're living in outside of that in the United States, you're subject to the Constitution.
Okay.
No matter what you call yourself, no matter what you think your lineage goes through, you're subject to the laws of the United States. Just like these immigrants that are coming in, uh, that they allow all of these Slavic groups and other these groups coming in, they are subject to the United States Constitution.
So are you subject? Are we subject by choice or by default?
Doctrine of discovery doesn't matter. It's default. You conquered. Conquered people are subject to the doctrine of discovery. You can read that in the Marshall trilogy. And you can cry, you can bawl, you can do backflips, you can even slit your wrist. Doesn't matter. You're conquered, and that's the laws. That's the laws of the United States.
Now that's a fact. Conquered because they came over here, invaded, and stole the land, enslaved. We are truly backed up against the wall. I mean, this is my last time saying something. Even by putting African in front of American, that's another form of pushing us up against the wall to have no ownership to this land by putting the word African on it. That's why if you notice, our name is the only one that keeps getting switched around. I mean, this is just my opinion. I do
You're
not
playing name games.
No, listen.
You're playing name games. It does not matter.
Classification does matter.
It
does not matter in American law.
No, I understand, Brother Reggie. I wasn't saying it like that. I have caught everything that you said. I was just adding that on as to say that's another form of them backing us up against walls where we can't get out by doing that. So then we don't have no ownership to this land. So when we do say something, they say, well, you ain't from here. You don't own nothing over here anyway, because you're not from here. You see what I'm saying? It's a lie.
I totally agree with you, but what I just said is really kind of simple. If the American government made a treaty with the indigenous groups of people, right? Manage the people that say they are who you are. Anybody else is subject. If you're living, you got a social security, you got a marriage certificate, birth certificate, driver's license. If you got all of those things, you're an American citizen. It's not your land. It's not your land. It's not a bad land.
That's what I'm trying to say. It's all a setup. They pushing us up against the wall.
So me and you, we agree.
Yes.
Right? We're closer than everybody else on the platform. We agree. Right? Yeah. Now, the question is, instead of being upset, right? Not you, right? Smirking your head, right? What do we do? The question is now, the smart people come into the room and say, how do we fix it? How do we fix it?
I heard you saying something earlier about words, Brother Reggie, and when I think about slavery and we was talking about other groups getting reparations and things like that, they always call it the institution of slavery. But when you think about it with things other people went through similarly, it's acts of war. We repairing these people because of this war and that they went through, and they prisoners of war. So we need to stop classifying slavery as an institution and just call it what it is, an act of war. And our ancestors were prisoners of that, and we are descendants of that. So it being an act of war, that then is entitled to those repairs.
You are correct, right? So let me say how this works out, right? Because you are correct. Okay. Most of the groups that we deal with, ADOS, Foundational Black Americans, right? Those groups, they are proud of their American contributions. They are Americans, right? They are so proud of what we gave to America as basically hoes. And so they want massa, right, to pay us, right, for the wrongdoings. They are or they're not never talking about separation. Many of the people on this platform at least talk about separation. No, these are people who want to be Americans, and then saying, "Well, you should pay us because, well, yeah, you enslaved us, but we are proud of our contributions." So what you're talking about is in dangerous times always wins. This is the time of Trump, where Trump said to us, I'm going to collapse the division of civil rights. All legal federal cases, right, they're on a halt. They said to the diversity, equity, and inclusions, right, if you worked in those departments, you're being fired. These people that are in that group of class of people, I'm going to bring hell on them. They think it's about the migrants. It's not about the migrants. That's easy to deal with, right? They're easy to track, right? The problem is us. And the thing about us is we are so divisive, calling us names and calling each other conclusionary names, right? But not being able to show standing who your ancestors are because we never researched our families, right? We are weakened from the hard fight because part of us just wants to be American. Forget Black American, forget African American, right? We just want to be American, and we're not going to fight. So we're going to get the gas chambers and ovens, and we're going to go in there willingly because we hate each other so much that we won't find common ground with each other. We think separating for reparations is the key. Um, that is the problem. But always win. You are right on.
Right. Okay. So did that answer your question? Um,
Yeah, I was just saying, like, I mean, I look at it as an act of war, and I have to think about
me
the
too.
strategies that we come together with. It has to be like a war tactic type of thinking, from that standpoint. Because when we think about it as like, oh, it was just an institution and this was an act of business, no, it was an act of war. So we got to think like that and act accordingly.
Mm-hmm.
Or at least mention it. So most of these reparations thinking that we have heard, they're not talking like you're talking. And that's the problem. They are proud to be. Let me show you the Foundational Black American website. Can I show you that?
Yeah, so you could just tell us it. You could put it in the chat
No,
so
I'm gonna
they
show
can.
you. I'm gonna show it to you. What is it? It's the is it called? The official FBA. No, demonstration beats conversation. Official official FBA, I think. Official FBA.
Okay. Yeah. Do you show us
Foundational
this
Black
way?
America's official.
Yeah. Oh shoot.
You okay? So I have it here. So this is the description of, and I don't know if that agrees with you
I think
all.
we did that the other day, didn't we, Dots? I think we went through that when we were talking about Tyreek Nasheed or something like that.
Okay, so I can't. So I could have shown it, but I don't need to show it. But I
No, no,
love your
no. I
sister.
was just saying, I love you too. I knew you was trying to show us where to find the information.
No, I was going to just show you the images of see how you represent yourself
Hmm.
is it tells you a whole lot. And so I was going to just show it to you, but it's not necessary. I think I'm done. My purpose on here was to tell you about Callie House, which I did, who started a real reparations movement,
Hmm.
to show you the Pelman Pharma lawsuit and how there's case law that we can't, a harm to our ancestors is not a harm to ourselves. and that is a burden. To talk about some of the other burdens, and now ultimately the hard work is
To
uh,
answer these questions and come up with solution. Yep.
that's all. And it shouldn't be divisive. We shouldn't be fighting ourselves over some reparations that, guess what? They ain't going to give it to us willingly. So if they're going to give it to us willingly, I think that we need to organize with all
Right.
the ground and figure out a solution.
Right. I agree with you 1,000%. And we
Thank
do
you.
appreciate you. We, for you to come on and give us information that you did give us and unscramble our minds with this information. And all those, that are interested in trying to come up with a solution, hit us up because this is important. And if they give a solution, I need that. Okay.
Okay, so
So
I have my YouTube channel is Africa Online TV. I will put it to you.
Did you
So
drop your Cash App, Reggie?
oh
no,
yes, I
and I
did.
told him, see how many I
Did
told
you
him
pin
like
it?
8 times.
It's in the chat. I dropped it in the chat.
Sorry, it's a lot going on behind me. So when I click off, I'm going back and forth. I apologize. I didn't see it.
It's all right. I put it there. It was there half an hour ago. But I
But you
looked at
got to
the
keep
audience.
doing that.
No,
So
I usually pin it. Sorry.
Yeah, you do.
I had to leave the
so
screen.
here's it says I tried to put it on your channel, but it says subscribers can only send. So I put it in the chat, and now I'm gonna put it in the whatchamacallit, the chat. So this is my YouTube channel, and I'm not worried about cash apps today. I'm more worried about um, my cryptocurrency, but that's what I'm worried about right now. But I appreciate y'all hanging out with me and at least understanding what the courts have done to us, and so that we can sit down and decide what the solutions are instead of making noise.
That's true. That's true.
And that's
Okay,
about it.
y'all.
That's it.
So we're
And
going to
thank
end.
you for being open to questions because, that's usually how we do our forum and our panel. When guests come on, it's a back and forth. We ask questions. That's sort of like our thing. So thank you for being gracious enough and patient to answer our questions. That's most appreciated. Shout out to y'all in the chat, to all the cousins who always support. We see y'all. We appreciate each and every one of you. It's been a good build. Thank you, Reggie.
Thank you
Thank
very
you,
much.
ladies. You have a
We'll
good
see
night.
you again with solutions. That's what's going to be solutions with Brother Reggie.
You're all right. Tough camp. So I did my best on the
Yes,
facts.
you did. You did
You
great.
survived, Reggie. You survived. Okay.
Yeah, I don't even know that on you. I
You
don't
were
even
able
know.
to handle 4 women at one time.
Yeah.
Not many men can do that.
And keep it
Real,
respectful.
for real though.
It's always been tough with y'all. I appreciate y'all, but I really try to give you my best research
We
instead of
appreciate that.
some of the people that come in here and sell you dreams and fancy words and nice haircuts or the fact of the matter is, can you give somebody a case law to let them know at their worst what is happening, right? And what can our people do about it? And that's what I try to keep in my time, just to keep us on focus. I can't handle everything. I can handle reparations today and problems with our reparations case. That's all.
Yeah, you
Right?
did good. You did well. You passed. You passed.
I
You
did
passed.
that.
You
Well,
passed.
thank
You
you,
survived.
ladies. Thank you so much. It's been
You
other people. They
survived.
get away. They can sit up here and they can just say fancy
Don't
words.
be talking about our other guests now, Reggie. Now you was doing good.
I'm telling you that I'm
She got you, babe.
I'm not talking about our other guests. I'm just saying, I didn't say nothing bad about your other guests. I'm just saying it's harder for me than some of your other guests.
No,
I'll
Reggie.
be
I'm sorry.
hard on you.
No,
Y'all don't give
Reggie.
these people.
Reggie. Okay, we're gonna keep it. Never mind, because
We
were being really, we were treading really carefully, Reggie, like really carefully. You know what I mean?
Okay, but we can
But that's okay. You survive, and you want strong women around you, right? Like we're not pushovers. And at the end of the day, like I've always said, the bottom line is for people who are into law, who's a lawyer, who's a community activist, those are positions that they chose to do. It comes with a lot, but that was a decision that they made, right? And then part of that work is to go back to the larger community many times over. And yes, you're absolutely right. It can be very frustrating. It can be very annoying. It could be, like, no, I don't think you guys understand, but that's part of the work, right? And I think that is where part of the solution comes in at, is when that is understood. It shouldn't be
all beautiful women.
Yeah, but wait, hold on, Reggie. Hold on. Hold on, Reggie. It shouldn't be taken as a confrontation or a battle. It really is a conversation, and we were really treading lightly because I'm gonna be honest with you, Reggie, and we have great respect for you, but you survived, so you good with us. You didn't run. We had guests.
Reggie Reg. You good with us?
I appreciate y'all, but I tell you, I treat men differently.
Many have ran, Reggie. You stood there. Salute.
I treat men very differently, so it's my pleasure. I just, in my own way, just trying to stay focused on what I intended to do. But these men that come up here, they ain't got no longevity in jobs.
No, Reg, we're not gonna do that.
No, we're not doing that.
We don't know what they got. And I know what they have. We're not gonna do that. We don't know what they got.
But they smooth talking.
Y'all look great in the stream. It's time.
Thank you, Reggie. We appreciate you.
Thank you so much, Dots. I survived.
Right.
Reggie, real nice, Reggie. I was being real easy.
You know, baby, come hard, baby.
No, you don't want that.
Come on.
You gonna run. You gonna start crying.
No, baby.
I ain't got
to baby. No, I'm not.
You proved me wrong tonight. You proved me wrong.
Yeah.
You said you was able to That's the thing, Reggie.
I fight the crazy. I debate the craziest fake thugs would you ever on YouTube. I fight them all the time. People that got uniforms on, people that got funny hats on, people, all types of people, even people with arcs on. I ain't scared.
You ain't
scared. Down because I've been
Reg.
Huh? He said, I ain't scared of you myself.
I ain't scared. I ain't never been scared.
That's right, Reggie. That's right.
Listen,
okay, y'all, because I gotta get my grandbaby.
But intellectually, most of them are barely GED graduates, and they coming for me.
Okay, Reggie, we're not doing that.
I gotta get my grandbaby.
And don't you go talking about Reggie? You better not. Oh yeah.
Always win. Could you drop down, please? Always win. Could you drop down, please?
Yes. Thank you for joining us. Always win. We appreciate you.
Yeah, appreciate y'all, ladies. Have a good evening.
Thank you so much.
I just wanted to let y'all know my grandbaby got a master's in getting on grandmom's nerves. Okay.
Okay.
All right, y'all.
Listen, y'all, I need a drink after the play. All right, let me chill. But for real, y'all, in the chat, Sweet Feather was in the building. Cosmin Cal, what's up? Global Pioneer. We're going to shout each and every one of you out that always rock with us, okay? That Ombre, George Richard, Engine Number 9, Straight Smoke in the building. Big Sister was here. We love you and we miss you, Sweet Feather. Lady V was in the building. Y'all gonna have to work with me. Come on, y'all, help me out. Omar's Media was in the building. Who else?
Everybody was in the building.
Everybody was in the building. Global Pioneer was in the building. Like we really, it's about y'all for real, right? Like it's really. So we appreciate y'all because y'all ain't have to be here with us, but we out. I have to get up so early in the morning.
Oh God, I gotta get my
everybody came on my side too. Peace and love.
And we love Sharice. Listen, Sharice, shout out your channel real quick, please.
Yeah, so you all can follow me on YouTube at Sharice the Realist, spelled just like it is on the screen right there. Thank you, ladies, for always having me. You know, I love having these conversations, of course, with other beautiful, like-minded women. And that's what this is all about. And, you know, I love that we can show some example of women being able to coexist. So, yeah,
We love you, girl. We love you.
I love y'all too. Y'all already know what time it is.
Well, I guess the Nokia called me and said that she was going to try to pop in, but hey, I'm ready to go off now.
Hey, yo, Bad
Yeah.
Hombre needs to have a seat. Bad Hombre, you need
You
to
need
have
to have
a
about
seat.
3
Oh my God.
Standing
That
up.
Hombre, stop
again.
playing.
Because you getting on every bit of the one nerve I got left tonight.
Yeah, it's holding on with me with a little string. That's my boy though. And that throwing
Bad Hombre
Skywalker.
is something else.
Together.
It's something else. Oh yeah, you know what? Bad Hombre, since you like telling us about, you know, all the things,
And
we
all
would
the
love to
money he
hear
got.
how the Trump inauguration went, because y'all know Bad Hombre said that he had a ticket. He got it for free.
Well, he went to McDonald's.
And he was invited to Trump's inauguration. I would love to have Bad Hombre on and talk about that. We would love to see your face finally. We would love to hear your voice, you know. Bad Hombre.
Bad Hombre is way okay. But anyway,
All right,
he ain't get on here saying I win, freedom. I went. I ain't see that, so he ain't go. Did you?
He said it was phenomenal. Bad Hombre, bring your behind up on this show. Hold the camera on. Let's start there.
You know he's not turning his camera on.
At all.
Go ahead.
She said, on that picture. He's something. But okay, y'all. Good night, sister.
Good night. Good night. Good night.
Good night, y'all.
Sharice, they love you on.
All right, I'm out, y'all. Peace.
I love y'all too. Peace.
Okay.
Peace, sis.
Yes.
Good night, everybody. Be safe. It's Friday night.
Commanders taking that stuff on Sunday, baby.
Oh,
hey, taking that championship.